Hi everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Rabbi Reacts. We've been doing 4 episodes till now. This is going to be the 5th and final for now on free will. Before I do that, please remember, if you do like these contents, to like, to subscribe, and to click on the little notification button so that you can get notification when videos like this or anything else we produce of interest comes up. Okay, so what we've talked about in previous videos, just to recap, is in the first video, we talked about the Benjamin Libet experiment. Some people claim there's been scientific evidence we don't have free will, and I explained why I don't think that's accurate at all. In the second video on the subject of free will, we looked at Sam Harris's philosophical argument to try to argue that it's impossible to have free will, and I explained why I don't think that's a valid philosophical argument. In the third and fourth videos, we looked at a series of thinkers on Big Think, the great free will debate, and analysed some of their views, the view of Daniel Dennett and Steven Pinker, who claim to different degrees consciousness is an illusion or it's so physical that might not be free will. We talked about, or there isn't some wispy soul thing that enters the brain. We talked about that. And other thinkers, Michio Kaku, and the possibility of free will. Today I want to really give a summary of what I think the Jewish view is and my own view on free will. And the summary is as follows. Let's go into a few little pieces. One is, what do we mean when we say we have free will? So we talk in Judaism a lot about a soul. There's a soul and a body and the conflict in the mind that rages. And one of the points which I did clarify in previous videos but want to make very clear here is the fact that we talk about a soul does not mean some wispy extra metaphysical entity that enters into our head as well as the neurons that are firing. That's not what we mean. And I brought a particular source, one of the classical Jewish sources that speaks about it by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, the classical philosopher of Kabbalah in the 17th century, which is that really all the substance of the world is made of the same stuff ultimately. When we talk about things having soul, and we spoke about everything from the perspective of those who speak about souls in Judaism, everything has soul, meaning that everything is God thinking it into existence. So there's a godly or spiritual component of all existence, but some things manifest that soul or connect to it more. And as you're getting from inanimate objects to more animated, to alive, that reflects godliness more, to consciousness, that reflects godliness more, to something as sophisticated as human. It can have society and awareness of awareness and think about a creator, meaning and purpose. The human mind that expresses its soul from that perspective by having this emergent property of consciousness is so godly it can actually absorb the fact that it is a will of God, and it can think about what that will might be and what the purpose of creation might be and how it can align. From that perspective, it is fully connected and plugged in to its soul. That's what we mean by that. And that level of higher awareness is what generates a very, very high level of free will. That was a very important angle of what we mean from a Jewish perspective. And I guess from other spiritual traditions might cohere with that too, by that type of free will. But let me also talk a little bit from a secular perspective of where free will might be, where the space of it might be from a scientific perspective. And that is that if we think about, we discussed that from a purely evolutionary perspective, consciousness must do something that brains alone, just firing neurons, can't do. Otherwise, it wouldn't have first developed and then been doubled down upon and expanded and expanded and expanded through the development of animals and through humans and so on. There must be something that happens, decisions that can be made at a conscious level that wouldn't be as good if they were just made at the level of non-conscious behavior. And that's something already getting close to basically free will, or at least there's something consciousness is doing more than the sum of just the neurons firing, making decisions. And it seems that when we look at animals, they are much more limited in their free will behavior than humans are, a point Daniel Dennett made, I think elsewhere, not the clip that we showed, and others make it too. So that, for example, we start to see autonomous behavior. Conscious beings can kind of scan an environment, look at options, quickly make decisions that, machines could also make some of those decisions, but there seems to be something also added to conscious behavior, but not that much. And the brain sort of makes sure that this little consciousness it's kind of evolved or created doesn't get too autonomous and run away with itself by throwing emotions in, by sending fear and other things into the mind, into the consciousness to kind of control control it. So it kind of almost like sends, here's a decision, make it quickly, thank you, we get on with this. You're like a bit of a slave to us. We don't let you have much autonomy, Mr. Consciousness or Miss Consciousness or whatever consciousness you are. And then when it gets to the human, something strange happens. It's almost like what we're doing with AI, where it might get away from us and develop the mind of its own. The human mind seems to have such a powerful ability that it can almost like override what the brain wants to do with it. And we see examples of this all the time. One classical example is the way we deal with fear. Fear is one of the best ways of the brain to control the decisions of the mind. And yet humans can kind of decide, hey, we don't like that. Fear emotion is a whole bunch of feelings, some which we like, some which we don't like. And the main thing we don't like is it tells us we're in danger. But we actually also like it as well. Imagine if we could construct a scenario where we can trick the brain into thinking it's in danger. And so we'll develop theme parks or watch horror movies. And we're basically, the brain is trying to control the mind by saying, oh, danger, boom, fires off fear. And the mind's really in control of the brain saying, thank you very much, we're enjoying this little tricking you into trying to scare us, and so on. So there's a lot of interplay between the level we call mind and the level we call a brain. And it seems the causation works in two different directions. The thesis of free will is that at some point, the mind has an ability to absorb all the things and make an actual decision. Not everything that the mind thinks it makes is that free. For example, when we decide between which ice cream we want for dinner, right? Steven Pinker's example. We're not that free in the sense that the mind may say, okay, let's absorb the information. But it's really gonna, if it's just two flavors of ice cream, let's say, each equally healthy, each cost the same, there's really only one decision, which do I like more? Go back to the memories, go trigger associations, think about the feelings. I like that feeling better than I like that feeling. There's not that much free will. I'm not even sure if we would call that free will at all, though it may be a consciously released decision. It's not really much free will. But once we start getting to areas where the brain doesn't give a decisive single answer, but gives lots of different answers, that's the sort of arena in which we would have free will. And that typically happens in things like moral considerations. This is good for me now, but it's bad for the environment. This is good for me now, but the consequence later on may not be good for me. So which do I go for? That's close to not quite in a moral decision, but I think the better decision, but the here and now decision are in conflict. So there's a here and now, sort of simple older brain, reptilian brain giving one answer. There's a kind of self-control answer. This will be better for my overall health, my overall well-being, which is one form of morality, my decision now to help me later on. And much more so when it gets to helping others. This is good for me, but this is good for them. And within those, that's where the free will arena really becomes powerful. Now, there's a beautiful analogy to the area of decisions we do have free will and the areas we don't, because obviously our nature and our nurture will control an enormous amount of decisions for us. And Rabbi Dessler was a great Jewish thinker in the mid 20th century, summarized the Jewish view by creating an analogy with a battlefield. You've got two armies at war, say in the days before long-range air force and missiles. And as the war's raging around the battlefront, there'll be large parts of each country that are far away from the battlefield that hardly notice there's a war going on there, where they're too out of reach of the enemy being able to reach. And as you get closer and closer to the battlefield, you start to notice the battle a little bit more. You get to the cities where they start to evacuate non-essential civilians. You get then really close to the front line where civilians are not even allowed to be there. Then you get right within sniper range. Nobody pops their helmet up there without, first putting a dump, without a loaded weapon, but the battlefield moves. So as you advance 5 kilometers, another 5 kilometers of your cities become safer. Another 5 kilometers of cities that were out of range move into range, and so on. It's a fluid battlefield. By analogy, if each of us begins life with a set of our genetics, the families we're brought up in, our nurturing, that will set up a battlefield for us. And the vast majority of even theoretically moral decisions, we won't have much free will over. Most people viewing this, one hopes, will not have a major battle today over whether they should kill an innocent person or not. Maybe one or two viewers, but hopefully the vast majority will never have that struggle. That's like your capital city is so far away from the front line. Theoretically, you've got a decision to make. In practice, you don't. There's no real conflict in the brain. Conversely, there may be values of ideals of what you'd love to do that are just so far away, the angelic levels of behavior, forget it. It's just in enemy territory. You have no way of reaching that. You don't even lose sleep over the fact that you're not going to do that. But then you get closer to the frontline arena, things where you feel, I'm going to make the right decision, I could hear it going wrong, or I'm going to make the wrong decision, one day I could aspire to make the right decision. And then you get to the actual battlefield itself, where today you could rage, you could go either way. And when we lose one battle, right, let's say, when I was a kid, there was a lot about smoking cigarettes. It was quite a cool thing for teenagers to do. So you'd go around the back of the school playground, smoke one cigarette, and you'd say, I'm not going to be addicted, I'm only going to smoke one. A few days later, you'd say, no, I'm only doing one a week. A few weeks later, you're doing one a day. A few weeks after that, you're doing one every break time. A few weeks after that, it's a packet. A few weeks after that, and the battlefield moved. At the time you said, I'm doing one, I don't need to take more than one a week, that was the only battle. Of course, it was ridiculous to think I'd be smoking a packet a day. That's crazy. The battlefield wasn't there. But as we lost that battle, and then the next battle, then the next battle, then all of a sudden, things we thought we'd never do become doable. The enemies move deep into our territory. And vice versa, if we start rolling back the other way, we start, for 1 hour a day, I won't say anything negative about anybody, or for 1 minute, or for 20 minutes a day, I won't say anything negative about people. Then that expands to 40 minutes, then that becomes an hour. We can start to move forward. So there's a point at which everything's poised and the brain doesn't give a clear decision and the free will operates and it can go either way. And the point of all of this is, and that coheres deeply with our own inner experience. In fact, there's a beautiful articulation of our experience. There's decisions we make where we don't really have free will. And we look at them and we wish we'd make a different decision, but we just didn't feel any possibility of overpowering the urge. And there's other decisions where actually we can. And the way it works, again, certainly from Jewish sources, and I think it coheres, and again, I'm not as familiar with other sources, probably other traditions say something similar. But certainly I think this coheres deeply with experience, is that if we don't actively push in the direction of the more ideal choices, our brain does default towards the more impulsive choices, the more self-centered choices. So in a sense, we have the free will choice to override the impulse and to train the brain, a bit like to go to the gym and to build the free will muscle, to build the make the right choice muscle. The right choice, we might all disagree on what it is, whatever we think it is, build the right choice muscle and strengthen it, and then push down the battlefield, strengthen it. That's our free will. But if we are free will lazy, it's not like no decision gets made or random decision gets made. We kind of default to the easier or more self-centered decision. So we have the free will, but we have to actually exert the make the right decision muscle at that point. We're free to choose to do it or free not to. And to the extent to which we do it, we then build it, we strengthen it, we advance along the battlefield. And the extent to which we don't do it is the extent to which we start to lose ground. And over time find ourselves getting more moody or more despondent. And the brain, there's some really great videos on YouTube, some really great material on people bringing in neuroscience and plus experience of the way that we can literally reprogram and retrain our brain in all sorts of areas. Surprisingly so, because so much of the information we receive from society tells us that we can't, and we're victims of our circumstance and our nature and our nurture. And there's amazing scientific research that does point out, and Daniel Dennett brings this thought experiment in one of the videos. Again, I didn't get to comment on it in the Big Think video. Again, the link will hopefully be below, where he makes the point that there's plenty of scientific evidence that shows when people don't believe they have free will, they do default towards the simpler, more self-centered, more impulsive decisions. And when people realize they've got free will, they start to make decisions that they value more. And I think this is something we can start to experience, that by training, we can actually train, our mind can help train the brain. It can train what signals to send back into the mind. It's a two-way process. And like everything, when we learn to use the free will and we learn to keep reprogramming the plasticity of the brain, then we can achieve tremendous things. So I hope this has been a helpful series for you. I've enjoyed getting comments and feedback either in the comments of these videos and also a lot of direct messaging, both on social media channels and emails, and even getting 1 or 2 phone calls. But I'm going to move off the free will because I covered quite a lot of it. May come back to it in a future set of videos. In the meantime, I've already had a few requests to speak about archaeology in the Bible, so we might do that next. We'll see. But thank you very much for being a great audience, and thank you for the comments, whether they're supportive or critical. Lots to learn from all of them. And I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope these have been helpful to you, and I hope that you like, subscribe, and click on the notification button, and that we see you in the next videos. Hi everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw, please click on the like and subscribe and hit the notification button below. Thanks so much.